For the next semester, the University of Bayreuth is using forms of hybrid teaching. Teachers are encouraged to develop hybrid teaching models. This video offers you a few impulses on how this could look like. Afterwards, you should be able to use our ideas and tips to develop your own scenario of online teaching. Before you plan a specific lesson, we recommend that you first consider the goal. Ask yourself, what should the student be able to do after the lesson? Which aspects should they recall? Which methods and techniques should they be able to apply? Which aspects should they analyze, and which scientific techniques should they be able to use? It is very goal-oriented and can be very effective to specify these goals. As you know, teaching is more than the presentation of information. It includes the practice of techniques, methods, and a deeper understanding of some topics. In this way, we ensure that students are well versed in the content they study and can use it in a practice-oriented manner. Due to the current situation, not all students can be present in one room at the same time. Some might be in the room with you or the lecture hall. Some are only present digitally. The question is now, how can you achieve the mentioned goals with these diverse attendances? There is a variety of possibilities we would like to present to you. First and foremost, we categorize the teaching activities into 5 phases. Phase 1, the presentation of information or content. Phase 2, the processing of the information by the student. Phase 3, the practice of methods, techniques, analysis. Phase 4, the exchange about questions. And phase 5, the critical discussion. The presentation of information. The phases of giving presentation, presenting information, or explaining an approach are easy to realize. Using our video conference software Zoom, we can share the screen for the virtual attendees and talk into the microphone. For attendees in the room, you can share the screen with the video projector and talk about the slides and what they can see. The difficulty of the situation is the fact that you won't satisfy any of these groups. If you move during the room to talk to address and motivate the physically present attendees, the virtual attendees most likely won't hear you anymore. Unless you use an attachable microphone or a camera which films all movements. There are rooms which were built specifically for video conferences, but they aren't available everywhere. If you point your hand towards the screen of the video projector to underline certain aspects, the virtual attendees most likely won't be able to see this. In conclusion, you need a style of presentation which is adequate for both groups. Therefore, try to verbally name the aspects you want to point out.
As you can see in the graphic on the right top in the middle, the lines meet. Please note the 2 red marked fields. There you can see 2 important aspects we have to consider when speaking about this issue. Accordingly, the why and the why are critical.
Maybe it is useful to some of you to imagine that the virtual attendees can't see you at all. Try to verbally name everything you want to underline with gestures and simultaneously use your hands to address the physical attendees. Our cognitive capacity is strongly limited. The capacity of our short-time memory is used after a presentation of 20 to 30 minutes. Now, we need to include a situation where the students need to actively think about what they just heard. Most students think about the information while listening, but studies have shown that the memory and understanding of the topics is strengthened when an active method is included. If we enable students to process the information they have listened to also in a mental, verbal, or written form, they automatically think it through. Or at least they try to remember what has just been said. We want to achieve this situation. Students alternate between the receptive, listening, and actively processing of information. We give the students time to process the received information. Specific methods. So what can we do exactly? You can also use so-called activating methods. Activating methods often describe precise procedures to achieve certain didactic objectives. The following is a good overview about a couple of possibilities. Some are also included in this video. A simple method is the input stop. The students receive the task to summarize the information they have listened to in 5 keywords or 5 short sentences. In hybrid teaching, you can use a Mentimeter for the 5 keywords. A word cloud is generated with the terms entered by the students. Secondly, you could use a flashlight, Blitzlicht, with a question to reflect.
Which of the things you just heard was important to you?
Each student. Of course, this only works for groups up to 20 people because otherwise it simply uses too much time. You can also do this through Zoom. Everyone can hear the statement of the virtual attendees. The statement of the physical attendees need to be repeated by you through the microphone. For bigger groups, we would recommend using an Etherpad. A task could be a 1-minute paper. You would request the students to
Please open the Etherpad and enter your name abbreviation in an empty line. After the sign, enter in your line within 60 seconds what of what you have heard today is important to you. You at home do it the same way as the students here in the lecture hall. You still have 15 seconds to log in and open the Etherpad.
Part with
15,
the information
14,
you wanted to get.
13,
What
12,
can the students
11,
remember the best and
start
the
now.
fastest? Check if the aspects you wanted to focus on are included. Have a look at the results, praise the work, and comment the input of the students. To sum up, if you have a synchronized lecture where all students are supposed to listen simultaneously, include situations where the students are actively thinking and doing something. Furthermore, let them communicate their thoughts verbally or written. Apply a tool that the student can use at home and on-site. The core of scientific teaching could be described as the teaching of certain techniques and methods to the students which they should practice. This could be, for example, scientific citation, the knowledge of complex rules, or the application of certain analysis methods. These methods and techniques shall be taught and practiced in the hybrid teaching as well. The work with students who are present in the same room might be easier. The work with students somewhere else might be a bit harder. A possibility to work with both groups is the use of classroom response systems. These are systems students can use to give non-verbal feedback. We combine them with the didactic concept peer instruction. I will explain this after the following example. With the possibility for the students to give an ABCD feedback, we can work with very big groups and find out if and how the whole group understood something. We can use this to discover wrong ideas on a topic and react to this. Let's take an example from science. We are in a physics lecture about forces. We introduce kinetic forces and pulling forces. Then, using this example, we ask students what happens when one force is removed. Look at this example. We are looking at a hammer thrower from above. The hammer thrower turns in a circle with the hammer in his hand. If he turns fast enough, it releases the hammer at point P. Now, we ask the students in which direction the hammer will fly.
Is it direction A? The hammer flies in a left curve? Or is it B? The hammer flies straight? Or could it be C? The hammer flies in a right curve? Is it D? The hammer flies to the right? Or is it E? The hammer flies down? What do you think? Which one is the right answer?
For now, we do not offer the solution yet. The students are supposed to think about the question. In teaching, we would now ask a multiple choice question and have all students answer it at the touch of a finger. This is done within a 20 to 40 second time limit. Schematically shown, it works like this. First, we introduce the topic to the students. Then we ask the multiple choice questions and examine the result of the vote. Depending on the result, you react now in different ways. If the answers are good, respectively 80 to 100% right solutions, you continue with your presentation and can ask another multiple choice question later on. If only 30 to 80% of the answers were correct, we carry out a peer discussion. In hybrid teaching, the present students in the room can discuss the results and options with each other, while the students that participate digitally can be put into breakout sessions. For this, you create as many breakout sessions as needed to have groups of 2 to 3 students per session. In Zoom, it works like this. In Zoom, it works a bit differently. You first need to enable breakout sessions in your settings once before you start your online lecture. Now you give the task and a short explanation.
The result is not entirely satisfying. I would like you to discuss with your co-students the possible solution. We will soon start breakout sessions. Please enter them and talk with each other. Turn on your microphone and let's go. You in the lecture hall will discuss too. Please put on your mask if you can't keep the minimum distance. Please think about different arguments for the options. You just chose a solution. Try to convince your partner that your answer is the right one.
Be sure to specify the available time for this. For complex questions, 4 minutes is appropriate. For simpler questions, 1 to 2 minutes can also prove acceptable. Close the breakout session. After you have closed the breakout session, students still have 60 seconds before they are brought back by the system. Why do we do this? We want our students to think about topics and we want them to get quick and easy feedback on whether they have understood something correctly. It often happens that you think you got something right and only much later or never you do realize that you have understood it the wrong way around. Now we add another essential aspect. In the face of the peer discussion, the students verbalize their thoughts. They talk about what they understood. To be able to talk about something, they have to process the content they listen to. Our goal is to make them realize, oh, I didn't understand something entirely there. We cannot build on such insecurities and misconceptions. Therefore, we apply the peer instruction with the important peer discussion to recognize gaps and react. Finally, at the end of the third part again, a feedback question for you. 4. The exchange about questions. During a presentation, students often have questions about the content, approach, or about what is important or not. It doesn't matter if students are at home or in the lecture hall. The virtual attendees can't simply raise their hand, so you notice them. Especially if you are focused on your presentation, you simply cannot concentrate on everything all the time. For this, we can use a tool in which all students enter their questions during the presentation so you can answer them after you have finished a part of your lecture. invite these students to log in at the beginning of the lecture so it's easier to enter the questions later on. You as a lecturer should inform the students when and how often you'll answer the collected questions, and furthermore you should have a look into the document after each part of the presentation. If you forget it a couple of times, it might not work anymore. Students have to get used to a tool like this. Accordingly, our suggestions are: practice it with your students, have a look on the page multiple times, if possible answer all the questions, ask further questions back to the students what their intentions are with their questions. About technique, there are interesting and elaborative systems where students can also rank questions. If a question is important and interesting for many students, they can vote it up. We have prepared a document for you in which many systems are presented. 6. The critical discussion. In some situations, we would like to have a critical discussion about a certain topic. In many subjects, this is an essential learning opportunity and activity. How would that work in hybrid teaching? Yes, the writing is an important activity here again, because the verbal participation and exchange with all students doesn't work that well and does take a lot of time. We can solve this easily with several steps based on each other. First, we again define the goal. We would like students to give their critical opinion on a topic, a theory, a method, or situation. This means they should be able to name critical and maybe also positive aspects. But first, they have to think about the topic and need some time. This can be done well individually. Furthermore, it doesn't matter where the student does it. The students could, for example, write down their own ideas, thoughts and arguments. That's the first step. The next step is exciting. Now our paths split up and we can choose the most suitable path. If we like to have a strong verbal exchange, we can use breakout sessions. There we could mix physical and virtual attendees when everyone is together in one Zoom meeting. By the way, the physical attendees could also use their phone to take part. A mobile connection isn't always essential. Technically speaking, we could connect small groups and let them talk with one another. Didactically, we still have to give the students a useful task. This could be, for example,
you've now collected arguments which are reasonable for this theory, and what could be seen critical. Please present your arguments in small groups. Try to develop arguments for and against as completely as possible. An additional task could be: if it is your turn to present your arguments, please consider that you practice scientific working. This means that you present another person your arguments as specifically and objectively as possible. Present it entirely, but nevertheless keep it as short as possible. Before we start, agree who speaks first. You now have 15 minutes for all arguments. Use your time. Let's go!
While the students are working, here's an organizational advice for you. During the short period of individual work, you can make the setting for the Zoom breakout sessions. Either you use a manual group assignment. This is best if only the physical attendees log in via phone, or change their usernames in Zoom. This way allows you to know who attends locally and who digitally. The students can call you into their breakout room if they have questions. If you would like to share information to the whole group, give them physical attendees. There should be one in each group. The students now share their arguments in small groups. They explain and add some aspects. The students are now very aware of the critical situation. Now you should plan a situation where you work with the plenary on the arguments. You can verify that the students have recognized the essential critical arguments for the topic like this, and if necessary, you can help them out. For this, you could ask the physical attendees a question like,
what are your most important arguments? Let's collect the 3 most important ones once again in the plenum.
An important didactic advice. With this wording of the question, you achieve that the students chose from the collected arguments what is really important to them. This again is a scientific relevant technique. You don't always want to be occupied with the smallest arguments, sometimes the most important ones count the most. You could write down the arguments on your computer. If the screen is shared via Zoom and the video projector, everyone can see them. Another important advice. If the students are connected anyways with Zoom through their mobile phone, they can stay logged in. They can share their contributions for everyone in the Zoom meeting like this. A small thing which could nonetheless be important. Students can change their name in Zoom and thereby anonymize themselves using, for example, a name like Santa Claus 123. This way, students might be more motivated to participate and speak to the whole group. The whole exercise takes practice. Maybe you should take the first lecture to train such situations. You could combine it with getting to know each other, activities which can be used to get accustomed to the technical issues. Finally, you have collected 4 to 5 really important arguments with the students. You can now elaborate these further, work on or go on with the next topic. The focus laid on the students to explore the topic in depth, to think it through and to analyze it. They interacted and practiced multiple scientific techniques. In the end, you visualize the relevant arguments of the students. This is a good and very important process for the detailed preparation of a discussion in which students are well involved both locally and at home. The second idea is similar to the first one, but it varies a little and we use additional tools to work more in written form. Again, we let the students collect arguments in individual work. Again, physical and virtual attendees work together in small groups. These groups use additional tools which allow us a cooperative but more written work. However, the activities have the goal of finding critical arguments about the topic and specifying them. Using a Padlet, we could, for example, divide a topic into multiple subtopics and ask students to contribute to each of them. Easily up to 15 people can work at the same time in a Padlet. If we create small groups and give the task that only one person per group should write in the Padlet, it easily works with 30 people too. Set the Padlet, for example, in the column layout and label the lines with the subtopics. If you, for example, would like to reactivate the existing knowledge about the topic, you could use a task like this.
Within your groups, find a subtopic for each main topic we wrote in the columns. Pay attention to what others write and try to find additional new aspects.
Alternatively, if you are looking for critical arguments, questions, or arguments for and against the topic instead, the groups could fill this out. Give them, for example, this task.
Please collect with your group critical questions for a scientific discussion with the writer for each single aspect. You can read the original article, discuss it together, and then fill out the columns with your critical question.
With this, the students visualize their thoughts, read the text and questions of others, and thereby deal in depth with the arguments of others. Of course, you should also practice this with your students. You could, for example, show and try out Padlet in the first session of the semester. You can find more information about Padlet here. A second possibility could be a kind of marketplace learning with an Etherpad. This is very interesting too and does contribute a lot for the review of a topic. With an Etherpad, many students can, for example, create written texts simultaneously. Unfortunately, there are only limited options for work with colors, so we structure it with bold writing and capital letters. You enter the task before your session in the Etherpad. You can download our example as a PDF here. We'll follow this procedure. For a complex topic, we create 4 groups with 2 to max 6 people. Group 1 to 4 will receive questions to which the students should find answers, collect them, and write them down. All groups work simultaneously and write in the Etherpad at the same time. After 6 minutes, the groups alternate. Like at the marketplace, they alternate from market stall to market stall, in this case from question to question. Group 1 now answers questions 2, Group 2 questions 3, and so on. Again, the students get some minutes time to finish the task, for example 6 minutes. Each group can read the text of the group before them and try to find additions. When time is up, the groups alternate again. Again, the groups try to add ideas to the writing of the groups before them in a time frame you have set. After finishing, the groups alternate one last time. In this final phase, the groups don't add anything. Instead, they highlight 3 or more aspects in the answers for their question which they think are very important. After 3 minutes, this phase is over and the group work is finished. Finally, ask the groups to explain what they highlighted and why. We used these methods multiple times before, and the 22 minutes of work are used very efficiently. Through identifying arguments and aspects, the students practice to read contributions of others and the evaluation of external ideas. This includes very important skills for scientific work. This procedure is very suitable for hybrid teaching because essential arguments and aspects are written down and thereby are visible for everyone. The verbal exchange in the lecture hall is optional, but it can support the explanations why an argument is seen as important and offer short verbal summaries. We have now offered you multiple ideas which should help you to develop your own hybrid teaching. We hope that these impulses contribute positively to your teaching. If you have further questions about this topic, please do not hesitate to contact us, the Center for Learning and Teaching in Higher Education at the University of Bayreuth.